The British Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines says Queen Elizabeth II left a legacy that the whole world would remember. To talk to us more about how she left her mark on the British business community, we are joined by BCCP Executive Director Chris Nelson. Chris, good morning and pleasure to have you again.
It's good morning, Rain, and a pleasure to be here and talking with your viewers.
Yes, this interview is going to be different from our usual outlook, but can you share with us what the general sentiment is among the British community on the passing of Queen Elizabeth II?
Well, I think the first and foremost, of course, is shock. When somebody's been on the throne 70 years, our longest serving monarch, as you've mentioned, honestly, you think she's going to go on forever. I mean, clearly, sadly, that's not the case, but you tend to think that. I mean, she's been there through such times. I mean, she ascended the throne on the death of her father, George VI. She served during the Second World War, and she's seen tremendous changes. So I think the overall view is in the community is one of shock. Now, of course, a lot of respect, and the fact that she has been such a symbol of continuity for 70 years, such devotion to public service. And I think now, obviously, we're coming now to the funeral, which will take place, obviously, on the 19th, Monday. But also, of course, welcoming and moving into the new reign of King Charles III.
Mm-hmm. Well, in this period, between that transition period between Queen Elizabeth and King Charles III, would you say that there is a level of uncertainty in UK markets, especially that you also have a new Prime Minister there?
Well, I think that to some extent is coincidental. I mean, the timing. I mean, just a reference again to the Queen. I mean. She actually welcomed the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, and obviously sadly passed away 2 days later. I'd say a few things. First of all, Charles has already ascended to the throne. It's actually automatic, and he's gone through the Ascension Council, so he is king. Coronation, I think, will not occur probably until next year. In terms of uncertainty, I think that there is that, but I think the uncertainty is there because of other factors. I mean, let's be very clear. The British monarchy is a constitutional monarchy. The Queen has always been very clear about that, always been very guided in what she's done and how she's handled herself so well over the 70 years. I do think there is a degree of uncertainty, which is combined with the fact, of course, that we're facing as the UK economy is facing unprecedented challenges. Obviously, inflation is a high risk, and this is obviously leading to concerns, and particularly on energy bills, which obviously has just been announced by, obviously, the new Prime Minister in terms of capping. So I think that the monarchy has always been a symbol of continuity. The timing, of course, just happens to be at the same time as we have a new Prime Minister, but I think it really is a reflection of the fact that she has been such a pillar of service. And let's not forget that probably London will be welcoming its largest gathering of international leaders that it may have ever seen, in terms of, I think, almost all countries will be represented on the 19th.
All right. Before we get there, of course, just a quick look back. Queen Elizabeth II was head of state, but not of government, as you mentioned, a constitutional monarchy. Some point out that although Queen Elizabeth was the monarch, she did not govern and can therefore claim not to be directly responsible for policy. So we can't say that any growth in trade, for example, or investment or relations is thanks to her. Still, she is credited for a peaceful transition from empire to Commonwealth. But as far as the developing world is concerned, are there developments outside of England that could be attributed to the late Queen? Or what contributions did Queen Elizabeth II leave behind, especially for countries like the Philippines?
Well, I think so first and foremost, I think the Queen took her service and her duty to that service to a level unprecedented. And she was very clear in that. And she ascended to the throne, as we know, at a very early age on the unexpected death of her father. And I think one of the things that she will also be remembered for is this was a time of great change. I mean, not to forget, she ascended to the throne, I believe it was 1952. So we're talking post-Second World War. And obviously, they were going through a period of independence of a number of countries. And she is head of the Commonwealth. And she did extremely well in terms of keeping that Commonwealth together, right, in terms of being the head of that Commonwealth, and was enormously respected and with a high degree of affection, even though with those countries obviously gaining independence, obviously the ties and the strength from the UK. I think it's fair to say that obviously she is a clear symbol of the UK in terms of soft power, in terms of how we're perceived. But obviously the government and the government role in terms of trade and investment is led by the government, Department of International Trade, and of course also supported, like ourselves, by the British Chamber here in the Philippines. I'd also make a comment that we've also had support from, obviously, visits from the royal family to the Philippines. Not, unfortunately, the Queen was never able to visit. Mm-hmm. However, we did have Prince Charles visit. We did have, most recently, Princess Anne, who obviously gave great support. She came for a meeting at the British Chamber. So I do think that the UK and the Queen has shown, and I would just like to make one other point, that the Queen has always shown, and as we have done it many times, has honoured the support that Filipino workers have done in the UK, particularly in the health sector. And that has been a continual thing, and she's obviously sent support and sympathy at times when such a country has been afflicted by typhoons. And let's not forget, the very first person to administer a vaccine in the UK is a British Filipino lady. I think her name is Miss Parsons. And I think that's just a symbol. So, yes, I think overall you have to mark down that the British, in terms of trade and investment, obviously lies with the government. But I think the presence of the royal family, and particularly the support to the Philippines coming on visits, obviously we would enjoy and welcome more, I think has obviously assisted us. But in terms of obviously working on trade and investment, that's really clearly the role of the government, Department of International Trade, and of course strongly supported by ourselves at the British Chamber.
Right. Well, the Queen had been a symbol of stability, consistency, traditional conservative values, and a moral standard, avoided interfering in political and economic affairs. And as you mentioned, the Queen was also a great supporter of the Filipino health workers in recent years. And now that Charles is king, there is a view that he will usher in more modernity to the engagements of the royal family with its publics and push his advocacies on the environment. How would you characterize the political personality of King Charles III?
Well, I think you've got to contrast that a few ways. I think he's going to be very cognizant, and he's acknowledged the legacy of his mother. And he has said that he will plan to serve in the same way. Now, clearly, when he was obviously the Prince Charles, he was a very strong advocate on architecture, on environmental, in terms of sustainability. I think that he will be very cognizant now that as the king, he has to take that very clear role, that obviously we have a constitutional monarchy. There is a clear that the government is, what is under the government side. And I think he will follow very much, and he's very much, as he's mentioned already, he's seen the legacy of his mother, and he's understood how she has operated for over 70 years, and clearly extremely successfully, and that symbol will be with him. So, it's hard to obviously predict, but I think he will take that on board. In terms of modernity, he's already indicated, or has previously indicated, although we've yet to see what that will occur, that they may well have what they call a reduced monarchy in terms of which monarchs will be working monarchs. He's made that point. So that may come through. And of course, obviously, the roles, he will now be king, and clearly his son, Prince William, I think that's already been confirmed, will be the Prince of Wales. So I think what I would make, I guess, 2 points. One, I think he'll still hold on to his obviously well-established private opinions. But he's clearly now going to be aware of what he has as a duty as king in terms of his service. And as your reporter said, he's now going to all the various countries. He was in Northern Ireland. I think he plans to go to Wales, etc., all the sort of areas. And I think that he will see some modernity, which he said, which means will probably be a reduced role or reduced number of people. So that will come through.
Chris, very quickly, as a last question, King Charles III, as prince, was said to have scribbled black spider memos or Queen's consent requesting a change of policy that will benefit certain groups of people or their personal holdings. Now, if he were to handwrite a black spider memo today to new Prime Minister Liz Truss, what issue would you like the king to shine a light on?
Well, first, I'm not sure he will be writing black spider memos, but if he did, I'd like him to obviously highlight the work we're doing in terms of the Philippines. I'd like him to say that we would like to see the economy further open up and just highlight our support. I mean, starting tomorrow, we have a virtual trade mission with the Kent County Council. And in December, we're going to have a further meeting of our meat exporters with a very successful British trade meat mission here with the Agricultural Horticultural Development Board. And that shows our support. And I'd just like to make one other thing very finally. I'd like to commend, of course, the very strong ties, particularly that President Marcos has, his affinity with the UK. And the fact, obviously, he went straight away, signed our book of condolence at our embassy. So, yes, I'd like to see, if he does send that note, that he highlights how that we can continue to grow and develop, how the economy can expand, and, of course, the work that we're doing to support that in conjunction with our embassy, our ambassador, Lord Beaufils, and, of course, the Department of International Trade and our new regional trade director, which is Lindsay Gilbert-Crouch. But to answer your point, I'm not sure he will write that note, but that is my wish and sentiment.
Well, good luck on your event tomorrow. As always, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. Chris Nelson, Executive Director of the British Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Rain, thank you very much. And to all your viewers, a very good day. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.